that's something that I sort of use to sort of qualify the buyer too, because a lot of times we do find out that maybe these buyers are really not qualified and maybe they're just not ready yet. Sometimes I've had to tell buyers a few times, you know what, I don't really think you're ready yet, really. And I think until you start to understand what your goals are, okay, then maybe at this point we're just not ready to move forward. And then
Welcome, everybody. My name is Matt Sochi, and I'm your host, and we have a great episode for you today. This is our third episode of the Path to Home Ownership series with Beyond the Blueprint. We are excited today because we have a good friend of mine and an amazing realtor partner, Mike Rivera here, along with the president and CEO of Premier Mortgage, Glenn.
How you doing?
And Mark Jackson, who is now on our third episode, senior loaner originator, and myself, president as well. So we're really excited. So you are tuning into the right episode if you watched the first two. If you have not, please go back and watch the first two because they all go together. So today we are going to be talking about working with the right realtor. And I think in this market, and we talked about it before in the first episode, is that with the changing, world of real estate and all the things that are always happening between rates and, now with NAR and broker agreements, there's just a lot of changing parts to this. So we thought it would be an important episode to go over and talk about is because once you're pre-approved, and to be honest with you, that's probably one of the hardest parts of the whole process. Because that's where us as loan originators have to really dig deep and make sure they're super qualified and bulletproof. So when they do work with somebody like Mike or a realtor out there, there's confidence, right? And that's the whole purpose behind a pre-approval is having confidence that, A, we're going to be able to get them from start to finish and to the finish line and keys to the house. So this is going to be an exciting episode. We are very excited to have Mike here and take some time out of his day. So Mike, why don't you introduce yourself to the team and to the world?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me,
of course.
You guys. I always appreciate your time and energy and the things that you guys do for the community. This is great. There we go. So my name is Mike Rivera. I'm with Saggio Realty. I've been with that company since, I think, 2010.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've been in real estate since 1996.
Wow.
So I'm going on, I think, 29 or 30 years, and as a licensed agent anyway.
Right.
And I became a real estate appraiser actually in 1997 because I realized I didn't know what I was doing. And I wound up getting a job in 1998 for Countrywide at the time. LandSafe was their appraisal division. And then, of course, I was also a licensed realtor, but I didn't get into the real estate side of sales until a few years later. I wound up getting my mortgage broker license in 1999.
So Mike's the jack of all trades.
Yeah, I was delivering appraisals to Apple Bank and Mortgage, and they liked my approach or the way I did stuff, that they were like, we think you'd be a great mortgage broker. You should do that instead and quit doing $250 appraisals. And so I agreed with them and joined them. And anyway, here we are today. So,
and you also do commercial real estate too, right? And
I do commercial real estate. Actually, I do a good portion of that. I stay in residential real estate. I think it's a way for me to serve to the community, my family members, the church. I have a lot of folks that just, I probably should go totally into commercial because maybe I've heard I'm overqualified for residential, but I think it's the right thing to do because I'm able to help provide services and help to those who I think sometimes need it the most, So I think it's just, I enjoy it, so. Yeah.
I mean, and that alludes to a lot of things. Like, so when we talk about working with the right realtor and stuff like that, is that, there's, and we just pulled this up before the show, is that, there's 226,000, not 100,000, quarter of a million realtors.
10% of
not in the United States though. No. In Florida.
Yeah. 1.55 million in the United States.
It's wild.
Yeah.
And, and I just talk to a lot of clients all the time and they're like, oh, I have a realtor and, wherever it is, Pensacola. And you know, and they struggle a lot. And because I think with that number, there's a lot of part-time realtors or people with other jobs, and that's okay. You know, some people don't need to work full-time,
Right.
you know, but there's a lot of realtors. And then if you look at the percentage of what's the Florida population?
22 million.
Yeah.
So almost a little bit over almost 10 or 11% of the population are NAR realtors. That's not even agents, right? Agents
Right.
are not part of NAR. That's probably another 100,000.
Wow. It's
You
amazing.
know,
California is number one. It's a little bit higher, but I was like,
well,
wow.
they're higher. They're also higher population. That
Of course.
makes sense. So,
I mean, their
yeah.
state's probably double, triple
Probably
the size
30
of ours.
million. Yeah, or
Yeah.
who knows? Yeah.
And then there's only 26,000 mortgage brokers in Florida. So we figured it out. There's one mortgage broker per 10 realtors,
Yeah,
right?
Right.
I think that's what it breaks out to be.
right.
So just
Good
a
for the
fun
mortgage
fact.
brokers.
Yes, it is. It's a fun fact. So, you know, so what we want to kind of talk about now is like, so, you know, when a client's pre-approved, right? That means they got the verified approval letter, they're good to go. And we talked about this last week is that, you know, there's something called a pre-qualification and there's something called a pre-approval letter. Right, our stuff is bulletproof because we do a pre-approval. We go through everything, make sure we run the findings, check the credit, check assets, and we don't just say, "Oh yeah, everything sounds good, Mike. Go show this person houses," and all of a sudden you're under contract. 2 weeks later, you get a rut-row, you know. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very important. But the next step is really working with the right realtor. So we wanted to talk about that a little bit, and I guess the real thing to kick it off of. You know, when you think of a realtor, what do you think are some really good qualities? You know, you're in the industry, you've been doing it for what, 30 years? Mm-hmm. And you've probably seen it all. You've worked on both buyer and seller sides. And, you know, we had just had a transaction where we could do the pros and cons on. But what do you think are some of the good qualities of a realtor in today's day?
Yeah, you know, I think probably the best quality for a realtor, for any buyer that's looking for proper representation, is someone who's willing to listen, right? Someone who
I like that.
talks less and listens more. Because at the end of the day, what you're looking to do is you're looking to understand their story and then take that story and apply it to their needs. So really, you know, listening, what is their goal, and then what are the steps that you need to take along with your mortgage partner, whoever that might be, to then achieve that goal. I think that's probably the number one most important thing. Number two, obviously, that goes along with that is communication. I cannot tell you over the years, I used to work for a company called Real Estate Network Services. That was probably in 2006, 05. And I was one of the managing brokers. And one of the biggest problems we had was when we would get people to call was like, "Oh, we can't get a hold of so-and-so." You know?
Oh, yeah.
And they have this high level of anxiety because, let's face it, this is the biggest transaction of their life, and they really do need hand-holding. And if you're not that person, if you're not empathetic to that need, you guys they're missing. It's two ships missing each other in the night. So it doesn't work. You have to be there where they need you to be. And if that means 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
so be it.
Weekends.
Right? Weekends. That's
Right.
that's the level of participation when it comes to being a proper realtor to service that buyer. You know, but mind you, it's only 3, 4, 5 weeks, hopefully, that you need to do that.
Sure.
But you need to get that first week, 7 days, whatever it is. You know, if they call, answer that phone. Don't let them hang out there where they're just sort of toiling with thoughts, and then you lose trust, right? Because this business is about trust.
Of course.
It really is.
No, I think the two biggest things is communication and knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
communication with the listing agent, the borrower, the mortgage loan officer, the title company. I can't tell you how many times nobody knows what's going on in the whole transaction.
Right.
And then knowledge, know your craft.
Know your craft.
There's a lot of realtors that don't know anything, you know.
You know what's interesting? I saw a reel the other day. I won't mention the name, but she mentioned, like, you know, she's very good. She's probably one of the top realtors in Florida. And she goes, "I'm not going to go show people houses in North Fort Myers That's not my area of expertise. And I think that's a big thing when it comes to knowledge is, you know, that's like me. Hey, Mike, can you go show Mark houses in Orlando? And you don't know Orlando. Why would you?
I wouldn't.
You're not directing traffic in the right direction.
No, it doesn't even make sense to waste that sort of time and energy. There's a learning curve there. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I've seen people do that. That's pretty popular in Miami. They'll come here and represent someone, but I don't understand why they do that. It might be for a corporate or institution, but for the everyday individual, it's not wise. Get someone local.
How do you think from like when you first started doing real estate, so go back in time, you know, how did you transition from then to like where you are now? Just between knowledge, communication, and listening.
You know, it's it really is. Experience comes with lots of trial and errors.
Sure.
Right. So you get experience. You get at a level where you're at that level because you've learned these mistakes. You've talked to others. You've obviously you've invested in yourself, the knowledge, the schooling, just the constant conversation, being sort of sucked up and passionate about this industry. And when you're at that level where you're just breathing and living this, I think that's where all of a sudden 29 years later, it's like, whoa, how did that happen? And to me, it feels like it was 10 years.
Yeah.
But here we are, you know.
Trial and error, I think, is a big one because I remember when I first started doing mortgages, Glenn, you remember, I mean, there'd be times I'd be up at 11 o'clock at night crying. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I don't know what to do, man. But we still figure it out, right? But it's trial and error, and that's a big thing. And I think over time, like if you ask me a question, I'll just spit out an answer in 2.2 seconds, just because I've seen it, done it, lived it, breathed it, and then you adapt as you go.
Right. As
time changes, like in our world, like tomorrow's Saturday, but Monday is going to be a completely different day, you know, and that's just how it works in our industry.
Right.
Yeah. Some of the best lessons are making mistakes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You know?
With anything.
Yeah.
With everything, right? What's it?
It's just not making the same mistake over.
10,000 hours to get whatever you do, right? Whatever you practice, 10,000 hours or more, you know, to get at a level of proficiency that's sort of like, I guess, professional or whatever.
Did you want to add anything on, Mark, or ask a question around that?
No, I think the part about communication and trust super applies to being a mortgage lender as well. Because I mean, the one loan I've worked on so far, the reason she changed to us was because the other broker wasn't giving her communication, and she was super frustrated about it. And really, it was just, hey, you know, this is where we are in the process, keeping her up to date. Even if it's just a note, you know, every day, say, here's where we are. When most people, I think, you know, here I think it's different, but some places like, okay, we're going to be going through this, and they don't communicate anything for a week. And they're just, like you said, one of the biggest purchases in their life, and they're just unsure what's going on. So we try to make sure we stay on top of, you know, keeping them communicated and informed. Even
I've done that myself, where I'll just be like, hey, just sending a check. There's nothing going on, right? Like we're in the middle of like kind of like this lull in the contract
just
process.
To check in.
And I'll just text and say, hey, just check in to see if you had any questions or concerns or thoughts.
Exactly.
You know, in regards to the next step. And a lot of times they'll just respond and be like, hey, thank you, we appreciate that, but actually you've explained everything perfectly, and we're good actually.
Sometimes silence is good.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah. But just a little response, just hey, just kind of checking in. That's all it has to be. And then they'll tell you, no, actually we're good. Or by the way, actually we did have something, but you know what? If you didn't send that text, right, you would know that they had something. Her husband and I probably were at night, laying in bed. You know what? And a question popped up. You know what? Let's call Mike, and they forgot. And then all of a sudden you just send that text, and they're like, oh yeah, I did have something.
Yeah.
I talked to, or not talk, but just in general, like vision of or things that I hear, you know, through social media is that, or even my realtor partners are like, oh my God, I just got a pre-approval from the big bank. I'm not going to give names, just that's not who we are here, but a big bank. And the number one thing that we hear on our side is, man, I'm never going to be able to communicate with them. I'm never going to be able to get it done in time, you know, with the contract. And I think that ties into the piece here is having a good communication between realtor and mortgage person.
Very important.
And when we're talking about people out there that are pre-approved, I have no problem talking to a new realtor I haven't met yet. I actually enjoy it and love it, and because that builds my business up. And but the biggest thing is that if you're a buyer out there and you go to the big bank, because we're just going to leave it at that, and that person that gave you that pre-approval isn't available, isn't around, that's not going to help you get the keys to that house. Because somebody like Mike, who is going to be doing everything in his power to negotiate and get you a deal, he's not going to be able to communicate with that person, which then can make your deal explode. Period.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you've seen it in your years. I'm not a realtor, so I don't see it. I usually am the fallout, like, oh man, you got to go save this deal. But
right.
Maybe you can allude to that to the people out there that are pre-approved, is maybe in the mortgage side of things. It doesn't have to be Premier Mortgage, but I'm just saying, do you think that working with local people or brokerages might be an advantage versus a big box bank?
It absolutely is, because when you're many times a lot of folks are not from here, right? They're snowbirds or whatever word, they're moving or whatever the case is, and they have their mortgage broker or banker from Tennessee,
Minnesota,
Michigan, Minnesota, whatever it is, right? And you get a buyer that's maybe they got some issues, maybe there's a DTI issue, maybe there's some things they don't know about, maybe there's not enough. They came here thinking they're going to get a place for $350,000. Come to find out, the median price is $520,000, and they don't have enough money, right? They don't know what the programs are, the grants. Even myself, I don't even know all the programs or grants, which is why I relinquished my mortgage broker license, because I could not keep up. I realized the amount of work and time for appraisal and for then mortgage broker, that was 30 hours continuing ed, and then real estate 14 hours of continuing ed. I was doing almost 60 hours of continuing ed. Right. And so I realized, well, I'm going to stick with the two lanes that I like the most. And then I have enough knowledge now to go ahead and make sure that I know the questions to ask, underwriting or my mortgage broker that I'm working with, or more importantly, I know who to work with and who not to work with, right?
Sure.
And that makes it more efficient for me and maybe even for my buyers. To your point, having a local is important because you need to know the programs, you need to know the standards, in regards to, what communities offering seller concessions of 4%, 3%, 6%, no percent, right? These things matter. And those things that knowledge can only be shared through a collaborative effort with our partners locally here in this market.
Right, because if you're looking with somebody from the big bank and you get a pre-approval for $550,000, it doesn't say in there they need closing cost credit. And if your buyer doesn't tell you that,
they don't even ask the questions. I've dealt with some of these big banks that, in fact, I was one of their brokers. I won't say what bank it is, but I was one of their brokers for a while back in 2010, where they were pre-qualifying and then sending me buyer leads, and then we were giving a portion of that back to help the buyer with some closing costs or whatever that they were doing at the time. And it was not a good process where continuously the buyer was lost in regards to where they were at in the process with their loan, and they were getting no communication. And what's even worse is that they were actually being jumped from one department. So there's phase one in one department, like the application phase. Then there's the middle of the contract phase,
and
then
there's Mark on another phase,
and then there's a third manager or asset manager or transaction manager that puts you into the closing phase. So that buyer is being flopped around like calling some big major car dealership, and we just have to wait online because you got to go to department 275.
That's a great point right there. I mean, those are things that we even see on our side is, we call them the rescue loans, because things Mark just had one, and I've seen plenty of them. I'm sure Glenn has as well, is that when your realtor out there is reaching and reaching and reaching, there's only so far they can go before there's no more reach. You're not Inspector Gadget, go arms, you know. And that's the thing, is that it's very, very important to what Mike is saying, is that you have to work with the right circle. We'll call it the circle. The right mortgage person that's going to communicate, the right realtor that's going to communicate, and then somebody who's going to listen.
Right. Again, I think I've used this word. I used it on another podcast not too long ago. Trust and collaboration is so important, because if there's an issue that came up or something that I need to know, or we need to modify something, right? I need to be able to call Glenn or Matt and be like, hey, we've got this, we've got that. How much more do we think this buyer can do? Because we're about to pull the trigger on something, and I need a fast response. And timing is of the essence in any transaction when you're transaction engineering and trying to beat out the other offer. And if I have to call someone up in Michigan and that person's not around, I don't have their contact, they don't know me from
so they're not going to answer the phone right away.
They're not going to answer the phone. They're going to be like, who are you? And, you know, we've lost that we lost that deal because I had no clue whether or not there was enough wiggle room in this borrower's debt to income or whatever the case was to maybe just move just a little bit, just enough to get over that hump, right?
Sure.
Because winning deals is not winning deals by a little bit. It's just winning by the nose. We win deals by a nose or even a hair.
Right.
That's all it is, really. And we need to know those things if we're trying to get, you know, beat out maybe 4 or 5 offers, you know, especially right a year ago, right? That's not the case now, but prior to, but that will be the case again at some point in the future when we get into that cycle of where people are sort of having to sort of understand where they're at and how to go ahead and win in a transaction, you know, when there's multiple offers. So yeah, very important, I think.
You guys have anything to add to that, or?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
All right. And that ties into, and we talked about this before we recorded here, is needs and wants, right? So actually, Mark, we just did a little skit a couple weeks ago. The microphone on my side wasn't on, so we never posted it. But however, live and learn, right? You got to learn to get better.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, you know, things such as HOAs, et cetera, needs and wants, right?
Right. It's everybody has something different in their life, a situation, you know, whether they have kids who are, you know, want to be in a community pool or something that, you know, they can get into the community. They may travel a lot where they can't be home to take care of their yard. HOA, a lot of times take care of that. Sometimes, you know, it's just easier life. Other people want to be like here out in Golden Gate Estates where you just take care of everything yourself and, you know,
And shoot your guns.
Yep. Correct. Correct.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a Florida thing for everybody.
Yeah.
As long as you have an acre and a quarter, I think you're good.
Correct.
Safety.
Yeah.
That's the role. Acre and a quarter.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Acre and a quarter.
Right. So we did talk about that. It was good. We'll redo that. But so this reminds me of when, you know, Melissa, my wife, introduced me to you, you know, because I was a renter because I had a short sale in Connecticut, and I was like, all right, it's time to buy.
Right.
And, you know, Melissa and I sometimes have different opinions on, you know, what we need and what we want.
Yeah.
And I remember you were going back and forth, and I was like, I'm not living out there. And you're like, trust me. But anyways,
Yeah.
Mike did a cool little, we'll call it,
A presentation I did.
is it a skill building task or?
Well, it was real simple. I'll do it here. It was I think I wrote a little line like this for Matt, and I put it was needs and wants, and it was basically reasons. I'll put reasons for it and reasons against.
Pull that up for everybody.
It was just a simple like that. And I basically told him, go down the list, you and Melissa, and you put in there what's important about this house and what's not. And you'll see at some point, you'll realize that one side of this list is going to have a lot more than the other. And with that being said, you've now made your decision.
Yeah. Without even knowing we made our decision.
And that's how I solved that for them, because obviously they had two different opinions in regards to what they wanted to do or not do. So that sort of helped out. And it's just a real simple analytical way to look at something it's real simple, but it works.
Right.
You can do that. You can use this for anything in life. Should I buy that boat? Reasons for it, reasons against.
But I think that's a big thing that where and I hear this a lot is, I have a thing called on Thursdays where I reach out to my pre-approved and looking. It's called the PAL. Right. Pre-approved and looking. Hey, Mike, how's everything going? How's it working with your realtor? And they're like, oh my God, they're showing us things that we don't care. So I think this is a very good tool for everybody out there. Is that I think even before this stage is, when you talk about real estate and with a realtor, they don't know you for anything. Like, you got to give them some ammo here. And I think this is a good thing. Do you need 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms? Do you need a pool? Do you not need a pool?
Right.
A garden. I think things like that are coming, like Mark said, in HOA. And I think that doing a simple exercise like this, and for those out there that maybe you're looking right now and you haven't done this exercise, maybe start doing it or get with your realtor and be like, hey, I did a needs and wants.
Right. Correct. You have to have tools to help focus, or reframe in regards to what's most important to you, no matter what decision you make. And I think that tool there was something that worked for me that I learned years ago, and I started applying that to my buyers, with other tools that I use to sort of refocus them so that we're not sort of 3-4 weeks later still looking at houses. Because if you're looking more than 10 houses, right?
I think you gave us 3. You said you got 3.
Yeah, I did.
It was 15, but
right,
3.
Right. We focused it down to 3 because the more you pile on, it's kind of like, I don't know, you have an office, right? If I don't know if you guys know about minimalism, but the more minimal you are, the more you can focus in regards to what you're doing. If you have stuff all over the place, you're like, whoa, where do I start? Right? It's the same thing for looking at houses. If you can't clear the table, right, you then cannot focus on those items, and then you cannot apply this tool to those items, because this tool should be meant for 2 or 3 items. After that, you're just not focused, or you're really not committed to the transaction. And that's something that I sort of use to sort of qualify the buyer too, because a lot of times we do find out that maybe these buyers are really not qualified, and maybe they're just not ready yet. Sometimes I've had to tell buyers a few times, you know what, I don't really think you're ready yet, really. And I think until you start to understand what your goals are, okay, then maybe at this point maybe we're just not ready to move forward. And then they're either like, you know what, you're right, or they're like, no, you know what, I think you're right, we need to make a focus. More than 80% of those decide, okay, you're right, we're gonna sort of do it your way and sort of get more focused in this, because we really do want to do this. And I think it's really smart a lot of times, whether you're a mortgage broker or a realtor, to sort of tell your buyer, sort of say, wait a minute, you know what, I think we need to pull this away from you. And if you really want it, you'll do this. No, I actually do want it back.
And huge points there. I mean, for sure. It's funny too, because, and we could even talk about this for a minute, is when I was up in Blue Ridge at our cabin for a couple of weeks for the holidays with the family. We were coming back home, and, I keep my phone off because I'm driving. And, I went to filling up gas, and I look at my phone. I'm like, Collier County Public Schools. Okay, is my kid in trouble? But then I started reading. It was like, hey, Matt, I found your information on Facebook and social media and your reviews. Me and my husband are looking to buy a house. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I keep reading. I mean, she wrote it pretty long. Won't give out the name. She's a great person, though. And, we started talking when I got back. And, that's when I did my part, got her all set up, pre-approved. Everything was good, and referred it to you. And how long were we from pre-approval to contract?
2 days.
Well,
right.
Nice.
Yeah.
2 days, right?
2 days. Yeah. It took me, I took 2 days to listen to her, to understand her needs. She was also in 2 counties. Well, I'd like to live in Collier County, but I'd like to maybe live in Lee County, and like 3 different cities. And within the first day, I focused her down to one county. And then when we realized that she could not get the grant that she wanted in this county, then I totally retooled her into a totally different way of looking at it. And then we moved to another area. And that next morning, I had her in the house.
Yeah.
And under contract, I should say.
And it was just crazy. And that's a big thing out there is that, and you and I talked about this last night, is that, I probably get 10 to 15 applications a week, and we give the pre-approvals, like we stop, drop, and roll. Like I got Tiffany on it, I got myself on it, stop, drop, and roll, and we'll work our butts off to get them pre-approved, but they already have the realtor. Okay, great. Fine. Then I'm doing my pals on Thursdays, pre-approved and looking, just following up, and it's been 6 weeks.
Oh, and they don't
no
have
contract, no
showings, no nothing.
They're just looking, just things are not working. And that's what I say is it's not the days of let's go look at the house, let's put an offer, and it's a sales. I mean, it's sales. It's communication, which is sales, listening, which is sales, and it's really, really important that if you are out there and you're not getting what you think that maybe you should be getting, is that you have to probably revisit that conversation with your realtor, and that's okay. You have to. Have you ever had a buyer tell you, like, Mike, we need to figure it out. We're not getting our contracts, or we're losing. Like, have you ever had that in your experience over the last 30 years?
From other buyers that
just buyers you have,
yeah,
and
I have. I've had buyers that have called me and they're like, we've been working with a realtor. It's been 4 months, 5 months. I had a few that said they had been looking for a year. And I was just like,
wow.
And, not to say it was the realtor or the buyer, because it could be either or, right?
Of course.
It could be the buyer too. I've also had buyers that have called and they start looking, and then we're sending them this and we're sending them that, and they're not really engaged, and then come to find out, they're like, well, we don't know if we want to live in Lee County or in the Tampa area. So you do get those too, and a lot of times they're sort of standoffish, where they don't really want to tell you what they're doing, and so you give them a little grace, right? You just give them the benefit of the doubt, and then you start to ask those questions and say, well, wait a minute, why are you not so engaged here? And then at some point they'll tell you, and then you're like, well, hey, thank you for being honest. I think, maybe I could help you find you someone up in Tampa that can maybe help you out. Maybe this is not the area for you. So you do get those as well. But that's something that I think that, as partners, mortgage and realtor partners, right, that we all should be sort of working to understand what that buyer really needs, because it doesn't help them any, right? Because they could just get frustrated. And if they're going to be looking at a different county, then why don't we just set them up with someone over there? There's no sense in sort of having them spin their wheels over here with you or I or whoever, because that also doesn't really help.
Everyone's got to work together.
Everyone has to work together. And the ultimate goal is really to get these folks into something that works for them, so that they feel like the transaction's smooth, the deal worked, and it's a win-win for all parties. I think that's the key, and if they don't feel like they're winning, then no one wins, really. So that's really, asking the questions, peeling back the layers of the onion to understand what at the core, what do they want to do?
I got a good one. So if you had to give advice to a family that's pre-approved, right? And sometimes it happens. Sometimes I get applications come through. I'm like, oh, who's your realtor? Who you work with? They're like, oh, we don't have anyone. If you could give a piece of advice to everyone out there, a home buyer, a family, how can they find a good realtor?
I would say, honestly, if they wanted to find a good realtor, probably I think the first line of any buyer is to really approach a local, well-known, established mortgage broker, right? I think they should start there. They should start approaching, like you guys, and then you guys could then advise them, look, here's 3 names that I know are really, really good. I suggest that maybe you give these folks a call. No matter who you pick here, these are 3.
Have a conversation with them.
Have a conversation. See how you guys mesh. See how you feel about that person. But again, I think 3 is a magical number, right? 3 of that. Like when people ask me, "Hey, do you have an inspector?" I have a list of inspectors. I have a list of insurance people. I don't per se make any one or or say,
Yeah,
hey, just
when we
call.
bought our last house, you're like, here's Troy and a couple other
Right,
people.
exactly. So I try to give the best of the best that I think are really top guys, and I usually put them on the top of my list that I have out of 10 people or whatever, but I let them make that decision. That way, whoever they picked, it doesn't sort of fall back on you, and it's sort of like, what, this person that you recommended worked out well. And so I think that's really the best way. So for a buyer, I think really approaching a mortgage broker, local mortgage that's well established. I think that's where you start. If you're moving to a new area, like hey, I'm moving from New Jersey to Naples, Florida. I think that's where they start.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you get pre-approved anyway first. So.
Well, right, and you kill two birds with one stone. Now you're pre-approved. Now you're ready to roll. Now your realtor that you're going to be interviewing knows that you're serious, right? Mm-hmm. You say, oh yeah, I spoke with Glenn and Matt, and they mentioned you, and then you're able to then call Glenn or Matt and be like, yeah, Cindy called me, and then we can talk about that, and then she's like, she understands that now we've had a conversation, they've had a conversation, and then you can call back the next day and, yeah, I spoke with Matt and Cindy, you look good to go. I think you're ready to roll. Let's sit down and have a conversation maybe on Monday and talk about your needs.
Yeah, I will tell you, like working with the right, we'll call it circle, partnership, whatever you want to say.
Right.
I mean, it goes a long way. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've sold deals by working with the realtor, being like, hey, this is our situation. This is our scenario. We're vetted. We're good to go. Fast closing.
Right.
And we back each other up. And next thing you know, under contract.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah. It does. It is a collaborative effort, and teamwork makes the dream work, right? That's what they say. So it's true, especially in real estate, especially in residential real estate. It really does matter.
Power team.
Yep.
You guys have anything you want to add?
No, good. I mean, awesome advice.
Yeah, very good, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah, I truly think I see it a lot, I mean, I've probably done 500 loans or whatever, who cares what the number is, but I've seen it all.
Right.
And I could always tell, the difference between an experienced realtor and somebody who's not is because then, sometimes I get asked questions like, how much should the EMD be? I was like, I don't know. I have no clue. That's not my responsibility.
Right.
Versus working with somebody is like, all right, our appraisal came in short. $20,000. We need the closing cost credit, just like we just had. And we win. We get both of it because we both attack together for our client.
That's right.
And that's the important part, is that if you're out there and you're having issues or you're seeing things with your, whether it's our side or if it's the realtor side, is that there's a lot of options. There's a lot of excellent people out there that will make the process super easy, fun. I had a client say, man, this is awesome. I've worked with so many different realtors and mortgage people over the last 2 years trying to get a house. And next thing you know, she's like, oh my God, I can't wait to tell everybody I freaking know about you. And, those are the things that why we make it fun. And we're not a 9-to-5. We don't work at a bank. We work for you.
Right. No. Right.
That's what we do. We work for you.
It's true.
All right. So a lot of good information. And Mike, obviously, really appreciate you. How can anybody out there reach you? What's the easiest way, best way to reach you?
Yeah, I mean, if you just type Mike Rivera, Naples Realtor or Naples, Florida, I think I'm the only one, so I pop up quite easy. I think there's another Mike Rivera in Tampa.
Yeah, don't cross him.
Yeah, but he's in Tampa, so yeah. So there's not many of us, and so I'm easy to find. I'm on Facebook too, Instagram, Mike Rivera _ Realtor. So I'm quite easy to get a hold of, But
or you can reach out to me.
I always suggest call you guys first, though.
Yeah, we'll do the warm handoff.
That's it. Yeah,
we love Mike, and Mike has been great, and I'll tell you, he's taught me a lot when I first started, because I remember I learned with you, and we learned together, and it's really, really important to have that connection and work with those people out there, because at the end of the day, is if you're a renter right now and you're renting and your goal is to buy a house, and you're still renting 6 months later, that is probably an issue. And if your mortgage person hasn't kind of directed traffic with you on that, then that's probably another issue. So at the end of the day is, if you're a realtor out there and maybe you want to gain more experience, well, guess what? I help other mortgage loan originators that do not work for Premier Mortgage because that's the type of person I am. And I'm sure if you had a question and wanted to learn a little bit from Mike, I'm sure Mike is the same type of person that loves to chat about real estate. That's what we do for a living.
Yeah.
And just to make people better. And there's a lot of great opportunities out there. So hopefully that this episode has kind of shined a little bit different light. Everybody is going to be different, and you might not get along with the person you're working with. That's okay. And I've seen it on my side, and I'm sure Mike has seen it on his side.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of the beast. However, there are great people out there. So it's very, very important that you work with the great people because you're buying a house. You're not buying a car.
Right.
You keep the house. The cars last 3 to 5 years if you're lucky.
Right. One loses money, the other
appreciates.
Yeah.
All right. So our next episode, we're actually going to have Joe Nugent, who is an inspector, and he's a great guy. I've been talking to him. So we're going to talk about inspections and how important they are.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you, I've talked to a lot of people out there, and they have no idea about the process after you get the contract. So having the right inspector is very, very important because obviously with the homes out there, you want to make sure it is, meets the codes with, FHA, VA, conventional, et cetera. But you're buying a house that's not going to have issues down the road because that's the last thing that you want to happen. So that's going to be an exciting episode. And if you can, we always just say, you can find us on YouTube. All right. Beyond the Blueprint. So there's a whole series on what we talked about so far. You can find us on all the podcast channels on Beyond the Blueprint. So this will go live on there. And if you have any friends, family, or coworkers, that might be renting or somebody who hasn't bought a house in the last 10 to 15 years, this might be a good thing for them to take a glass of wine and sit back and just kind of listen to us, talk about real estate and mortgages. So
absolutely.
Hopefully there's some good nuggets here, and we're very thankful for everybody that does watch us. Thank you so much, and thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.